Hi everyone, Sheila Butler with Successful Women Talk. I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. And on today's show, we have guest Amy Brann. She is a speaker, coach, and author of a new book called Make Your Brain Work, which is bridging the gap between neuroscience and business. I love the book. Can't wait to get in and learn a little bit more about Amy. So hi, Amy.
Hello, Sheila. It's great to be with you today.
I so appreciate it, and I hope everybody's going to be patient with us. We experienced some Skype issues this morning, but it is not stopping us from moving forward. We are going to learn more about Amy, her book, and I just appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you.
So, listen, why don't we start off with the first question that I usually ask, which is tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how that kind of helped you get to where you are today.
Oh, I guess everything leads from one stage to the other. I think of myself as having a bit of a funny start in business, in that I had never even had any awareness that businesses existed. I was really very narrow-minded in my awareness of the world, and ever since, my mum tells the story, since I was 3 years old, the doctor said to me when I was being particularly interested in a procedure that my mum was having done, "Oh, when you grow up, are you going to be a nurse?" And apparently at 3 I replied, "No, I'm going to be a doctor." And so all of my sort of childhood and teenage years, I always thought I was going to go into medicine, and I went off to med school at the age of 18 and did a couple of years there, but started, since I was about 15, had started to become more aware that there were other things in the world other than just medicine, and became more and more passionate about working with people in a well sense, and in a helping people to do better and achieve more and be more of who they wanted to be. And so when I then was at medical school, I became involved in more training elements of the curriculum. And I remember standing on the shores of a lake in Macedonia when we were training some medical students in the soft skills, so in leadership type stuff. And I remember thinking, wow, this is so incredible. I wish there was a way of doing this for a living. And so then I started exploring other possibilities outside of medicine and made the tough decision to leave, and haven't really looked back since then. Over the last 10 years, each stage has helped me grow and develop and look to the next stage. And in that first stage was coaching. So I feel very, very lucky to have moved into something that I feel even better suits my personality and my strengths.
I love that. Now, you said you were kind of afraid, like going through medical school, getting through all of that, all of the training, all of the hard work it takes to get there, and then make the decision that, I'm going to kind of spin this a little. I'm guessing that was really challenging, and how did your family react to that as well?
Well, thankfully, I didn't go through the whole of medical school. I think that would have been even tougher. I was only a couple of years in, but everything having led to that point, I think was challenging. My father took it really well, because he didn't ever want me to go into medicine. He said, "Why would you want to work with sick people?" So he was whatever you want to do, that's fine. My mum, I think she was, I don't know, I think she was disappointed at the time because she thought it was what I wanted, and at the time it was what I wanted. So I think she was just had the sort of the fears. Oh, what are you going to do? How's this going to work? But my aunt was probably the toughest on me. So yeah, I think it was interesting how families respond in those moments, and some of my girlfriends as well were very direct with me in terms of perhaps not thinking it was a good idea to leave. But now I think everyone looks back and can see, yes, it was a good move. And
how brave of you, because a lot of times when we say we're going to do something, we get on a certain path because we're there. We're not likely to change because of maybe what the perception of others will have of us. So, and the prestige of saying I'm going to go to medical schools and then really doing it. And then, I bet that was challenging for you. So I applaud you for realizing that you needed to change paths.
Oh, thank you. Often in the medical community, they seem quite impressed that someone's got out. So that can be nice to have validation from people, and I think sometimes people seeing, oh, there are things outside of medicine, should I decide that it's no longer the right choice for me.
The nice thing about it is that you do have though that bridge between the two of you do understand the science and like the neuroscience behind things, and then the business side as well. So that bridge is amazing, and probably something that a lot of people don't have.
I certainly feel very grateful for my grounding in science. My A levels were all science based. I've been sort of reading and studying science avidly for many years, so I do feel very privileged that when I pick up a scientific journal or a scientific paper, that I understand more than I would had I not had that grounding. But at the same time, I'm very, very passionate that you can learn things. So, I went into business never having read a business book in my life, never really having had any understanding of what a business was, but now consider myself fairly well adept in business because of putting in the time and energy into studying that. So I think you can learn anything you set your mind to.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great tip. We all have some good foundations, and through life we have good foundations. And with a little bit of study and practice, you can become an expert at something if you have that natural tendency to do so.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about this book, and I'm holding it up, not that anybody can see it, but I'm going to put a picture in the video so you'll know what it looks like. But I love this book. So what made you decide to write it?
Oh, well, I love that question. I've been working with people for about 6 years, working with people and organisations, and what I was finding was that each time we started working together, there was a lot that needed to happen before we were at a good space to do some really detailed work. And I thought, how can we most efficiently get people up to a point where their knowledge base is really sound for them to make the changes that they want to make and achieve the things that they want to achieve? And a book seemed like a really good vehicle for doing that because it's really affordable for people. You can get a lot in there from a content perspective, and you can make it really accessible, so you can explain complex ideas in a really step-by-step way. So that's where the idea for a book came from. But I'd sort of heard figures around, 1 in 10,000 unknown authors get published in this climate. So I was I was approaching it with enthusiasm, but a slight, maybe fear, a slight uncertainty, certainly uncertainty as to whether or not, where it would go and how it would get out there.
I love that. So let me ask you this. So you decided to write the book in a little bit of a different way. So it's not just hey, here's a productivity book, do these 17 simple steps, and you'll become the most productive person in the world. You wrote it sort of around a story. So let's talk about that, and why did you decide to do it that way?
From studies, we know that stories really help people connect and they really help people learn. And the topic of neuroscience, when you say neuroscience to people, they can often go, what? And think that it's not accessible for them. So by really breaking it down and looking at, because ultimately it's all about practical application. If we know something, it's fine. But if we know how to use it and we can work with it in our daily life, then that's when it becomes really valuable. So I wanted it to be very practically applicable for people. So you're right, we've got these 3 characters, and we look at the classic sort of challenges that people go through in many different walks of life. And the idea was to take these classic challenges and then explain what's going on in their brain at that time, and explain from a coaching perspective sort of what you could do differently, how you could change what you're doing to get the results that you want.
Yeah, I thought that was terrific. And like you said, from a different point of view, from several different characters. And then within the book, you have splattered in there also research, and I like that because you have the research in there, but it's not like you said, it's not, oh gosh, this is neuroscience. It does have the science in there, but in a way that is easy for us to comprehend.
I love that you've said that, because the aim really was to equip people. And I think while it can be useful and it can be great to have acronyms and step-by-steps and all of the things that are just the distillation of the science, I think a lot of people really do enjoy reading about the science, do really enjoy reading about experiments and what's actually gone on. And I've always sort of believed and found that if you've got that foundation and you've explained that science and sort of where things come from, then the distilled part that people often work with and remember if it's not quite working, they've still got that solid foundation, so they can look back at it and go, ah, I see why it's not quite working. We need to tweak it like this. Whereas without that solid understanding, you're a bit powerless when things don't quite work.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's hop into a little bit of the book. So I kind of wrote some topics down that I really liked because I think as a mom entrepreneur and as a productivity type nut, I love that subject. So I thought we would kind of look at it from a productivity, efficiency, and effectiveness perspective. Let's talk about the importance of like prioritization.
Ooh. Where do you want to start? I mean, in your life, you know, I should imagine you're a highly productive person, and in order to do that, my guess is that you do prioritize. Would that be right?
That's correct.
And for you, when do you prioritize? Do you prioritize the beginning of the week, the beginning of the day, the night before the next day?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what my goal normally is that when I get up in the morning that I already know what I'm going, my three main tasks. I usually have three things I know I have to get done that day, and whether I put them on a to-do list or I put them on a sticky note on my computer, these three things have to be done before I can do any social media, play an email, you know, do all of those things, interruptions throughout the day. These are three things I have to get done. When I put that into place, it made a big difference in my life.
Fantastic. I think what you've described there is a method that works for you, and I'm all about what works for individuals. I think having these cookie cutter template things that we're told that we have to do it that way, often that's not the case, and you know, finding a method that works for you is great. The sort of the underpinnings to that would be that you're priming yourself, you're focusing yourself each day. So our brain is there's so much going on with it every single day, and it's very, very easy for us to get distracted. So when one thing crops up, our brain naturally sort of jumps and follows that train as far as we let it go. You've probably had the experience, you know, one minute you can be looking at an email and it jogs your memory into something else, and you think, oh, I'll just go and do that, and then I've just remembered I meant to phone so and so, so I'll just go and phone so and so, and before you know it, you know, half an hour has gone past, and those things that you sort of knew that you wanted to do haven't been done. Whereas your system, where you've got those three things, you can really sort of groove yourself into staying on track and making sure that, like you say, you've done those things before you do something else. So you'll be employing a method called braking, which is rather than letting your brain wander off down a track, you're putting the brakes on, you're stopping it, and you're sort of refocusing so that you can then get that thing done that you want to do first. So yeah, prioritization is hugely important because it helps us keep on track and get the things done that we want to do before we move on to anything else.
I love that. I think it's almost like it sets people up for success. I think if I heard someone say putting success in your way, like for running, for instance, I'll put my clothes out or I won't do it. Or sometimes I just put them on and I make myself put them on, and then I know that I'm gonna, because I still remind myself, oh, I've got these running clothes on.
Absolutely. Yeah. The more that you can do to to make it difficult for you to do anything else, in sort of the neuroscience or the behavioral world, there's things called nudges, which certainly putting your clothes sort of either on your bed or outside your bed or taking your gym bag to work with you, it can help nudge you in the direction of the action that you want to take. So employing those little techniques is really useful. And another one to sort of help along those lines is priming. And this is making it really easy for your brain to slide into a certain way of thinking or a certain way of doing. And there's thousands of priming experiments out there that are along these lines. And from a productivity perspective, you'd be thinking about priming yourself to be proactive and focused and potentially task-driven, depending on the thing that you were prioritizing. And for that, you could listen to certain types of music, you could read something specific that really focuses you on being proactive, or you could even wear, it would probably act as a prime, you could even wear a certain type of clothes. So, you know, your I mean business type clothes.
You know, I love that. So is it kind of like saying that, you know, like for those of us that work from home, I feel better if I get up, I shower, I put clothes on, I put myself like in a mind frame. So is it sort of that same thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, your mind frames, and sort of experientially, we've come to create these models or these theories and the things that resonate with us. And a lot of them, we know from experience, make a lot of sense. So having, our work frame of mind on, or our, and our work dress and being ready to work, and the neuroscience supports that. So we know that sort of the pathways that are being grooved in our brains, if you've already got pathways grooved in that, for example, might say after you've had a shower and after you've dressed, that's when you're ready for work. Then those pathways, if we set those pathways off, then it's easier to follow into doing the work. Whereas if we've got pathways in our brain set up that say when we just roll out of bed and we're still in our pajamas, that's the time to slob around and be relaxed, then it's much harder to get onto the work track. It's almost like we've got two different race courses happening and we're trying to go from one to the other. It's not so easy.
I love that. So priming is important.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about this, because this is a debate I hear all the time. Multitasking. I hear people say, I'm the best multitasker in the world. Let's talk about multitasking a bit.
Oh.
That's a touchy one, right?
It is, and I completely agree with you. And in the past, I've probably said that I am a fantastic multitasker, and I think in the book we talk about monotasking, so doing one thing at a time. What we don't talk about in the book, because I wanted to kind of keep it streamlined, but for the people listening to this, I reckon they're sort of the next stage up, so they're happy to play with some more detailed ideas. The reason that monotasking is such a good idea is because our brain can only do one thing at a time within a specific brain area. So when we're talking about something that's really cognitive, something that's really intensive from a thinking perspective, using the front part of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, then we can only do one thing at a time. So for example, if I was trying to call my mum and do an email, then what would be happening is I'd be switching between the two, and overall I'd be doing both less effectively. So for things where we want to do both components well and as quickly as possible, then studies have shown, we've got numerous studies that say do one, then do the other. Whereas
I agree.
Yeah.
That's how my brain works.
Yes. However, if there are other type of tasks like cleaning our teeth, which is something that's very grooved in. We're very from a habitual perspective, all of the neurological connections are pretty wired in, and we can do it unconsciously. We're pretty familiar with how to clean our teeth. I'd be happy with someone cleaning their teeth while doing squats or lunges. Would you get the maximum effect out of the squats or lunges? Probably not. But would you get more effect than if you're not going to do them at all? Then yes, you would. So there are some combinations of things that you could do, that you could multitask. So for example, again, if I'm cooking dinner in the evening and I've got an hour to cook it and it'll only take me half an hour, I'm not really fussed about the quality of the meal. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be a decent meal. Then I could absolutely do that while talking to a friend on the phone.
Gotcha. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that it depends upon the task. So there are some things that maybe, like, you don't want your brain surgeon watching Grey's Anatomy at the same time.
Exactly.
But cooking dinner and listening to a podcast at the same time is probably fine.
Absolutely. You might miss some bits of the podcast, because when you need to engage your brain to think about what's coming next, then you're probably going to switch off your auditory connections a little. So you might miss little bits. But overall, if you're going for a feel of it, then you could do both.
Yeah, I agree. I find myself, it's funny, like I could never study and listen to music at the same time. So I have to have it really quiet. If I'm really concentrating, need to put out really good work, I can't have distractions.
I think that's sensible.
So let's talk about distractions. So how difficult, I guess distractions are different for everyone, but how do distractions affect productivity?
On the whole, they give it a big hit, a huge hit. So when we're looking to be optimally productive, we really want to minimize the distractions. And one of the things, I mean, there's two major problems, sort of classic problems in a work capacity. So the people that work from home often tell me that they get distracted by all of the things going on around them, all of the visual distractions, and it's probably, well, it is worse for women because of the way that our brains are wired, and the way that we tend to think and the way we tend to pick up on things, we will see things that men won't see on the whole. And everyone's sort of slightly different, so I'm polarizing. But if, for example, I was sitting at home versus my husband sitting at home, I would see if there were clothes that needed to be washed, or if there were magazines that needed to be tidied away, or books that needed to go back on the bookshelf. I would see those things, and even if I knew that I was focusing on my prioritized tasks, they'd be bothering me, and unconsciously all of the neuronal connections would be zipping away, and this would be eating away at my productivity. So if we're working from a home environment, we want a clear, tidy, pristine space to work in. And a lot of people say, oh, I like my clutter, I like my disorganization, it works for me. I'd say that maybe people think it works for them, but I definitely experiment with not having stuff around and see how much better it could be. The other sort of school of people are the people that work in offices, but certainly in the UK there's been a big drive for open plan offices. Is it the same for you, Sheila?
Yeah, it's funny because with my last company we had a big open plan, and I don't know if that was the best idea.
No, I was having a conversation with someone just the other day whose responsibility it was to convince more companies to have open plan areas, and we were discussing the problems with distractions and the problems with productivity being lowered in these open plan spaces. We're not designed to have lots of input coming in, and it takes energy to block it all out. So even if we're able to do it, we're shortening the amount of time that we can do good quality focused work for. So, I mean, one of the things that this gentleman was saying was that they did have rooms for quiet working, and that these open plan spaces were more for creative work. And that is important. We do need sort of collaborative spaces. But I think that the more we can limit distractions, the better for our productivity.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I talk about this also when I'm consulting with clients, is that, a lot of times I will suggest just putting everything down on paper, get it out of your head, because even thoughts can be distracting. So I have, I need to pay this bill, or I've got these invoices that I need to send to clients, or, oh, I forgot to do that proposal. So if you have all of these things running around in your head, they become distracting to what you're doing anyways.
Absolutely, and what you're saying is spot on, because what some people do is a thought will come in and they won't take any action on it. They'll just think, oh yeah, I need to deal with that later. Later, that thought comes in again, and each time it happens, you're eating up precious time. So as you said, the best thing to do is to brain dump, get as much on paper as possible, and then later on, if anything comes into your head, rather than just sort of trying to suppress it, just write it down so that it's safely down on paper, so that you don't need to give it any more attention or energy, knowing that you can come back to it and prioritize it at a later time.
Oh, I love that. I totally agree. And so, do a brain dump. I think it's just so helpful. Then it's not there anymore. It's like cleaning your space off. I think once you do that, once you clean it up, like you said, I think you'd be amazed at how much more productive you can be. Same thing with getting everything out of your head, putting it on a schedule, putting it on a calendar, putting it on a to-do list, but stop running it through your head.
Yes. Yeah, it takes energy every time we're running it through, and when we're trying to remember something for later, it's taking up space in our working memory, and that ultimately it will make us more irritable. It will make us more frustrated, because we're using energy and using brain space, as it were, for things that we just don't need to be.
Absolutely, and we only have so much willpower, right? So willpower we run out of throughout the day. So
Absolutely.
If we're taking it, if we're using all of this willpower to keep these things out of our head that shouldn't be there in the first place, maybe we're not going to make the best decisions later on because we don't have that same willpower.
Spot on. So we will be much more likely to reach for that chocolate cake come lunchtime rather than the fruit salad, just because we've not written things down on a to-do list. It seems crazy, but it's what the studies are showing us.
I know, I love that. That's why I love this book. See, I think I'll read it again. But I think it's terrific points. Let's talk real quickly about habits.
Oh, where to start? Habits.
I know it's a big topic, but
well, the brain is designed for us to have habits, so that we can free up our working memory, we can free up the part of our brain that holds things for just a short time so that we can actually work through things. If we didn't have habits, then we wouldn't be able to get nearly as much done as we want to get done, and we wouldn't be as productive, as efficient, as effective as we could be. What tends to happen is that for most people, habits develop without us having conscious input into what habits are developing. So we then we come to a crossroads, or a point where we're looking at our lives and we go, oh, I've got a whole bunch of habits that I'm actually not that happy with. And it's true that it does take some energy and some time and some dedication to change those habits, because again, if we think of it as like a racetrack, or for sort of an off-road kind of racetrack, the more that someone's driven through a forest on a 4x4, the more that pathway through the mud has been laid down, and it becomes an easier pathway for the future quad bikes or 4x4s to follow. If we're then trying to take a different route, so for example, if we have been used to getting up and sort of pottering around the house for a bit and then going off to work, and instead we want to get up and go to the gym before going to work, that's a whole new habit to create, and it's going to be much easier to get up and potter than it will to get up and go to the gym. So we're going to need to do some things to change that habit. And you mentioned willpower, and from the outset, normally willpower is really important in changing a habit, which is why it's great to not to try and change too many things at once, and to take very small steps when we're changing things. So small steps are really important. And another thing for changing habits is this thing called if-then plans. So making sure that we say very specifically how we're going to take the new action. So in my mind, I might be thinking, so if the alarm clock goes off, then I get up. And for some people, that might be revolutionary in itself. The snooze button might be they might be more close to the snooze button than they'd like. So having that first sort of step, and I recommend practicing that for a good week, just getting up when the alarm goes off. And then the next step might be to put on those gym clothes that are on the floor, and you might do that for another week. And then sort of the third week, it might be that you actually leave the house and go to the gym after you've gotten up on time and you've put on your gym clothes. So these small steps and the very specific steps can be really useful for changing the habit, because what you're actually doing is you're rewiring your neurology, and that takes time, because the habits are good at forming and sticking together. And so when you're wanting to change those habits, you need to just do it piece by piece.
I love that. So Amy, if we want to give someone that's listening today just a good applicable thing, they could go out and apply this today, what tip would you give them on being more productive?
Oh my goodness.
And it's almost, I've read the book, so it's almost impossible to narrow it down to one, but thinking in the mindset of, okay, I'm a mom, entrepreneur, I'm busy. What is a tip that you see that people maybe have the most challenges with, or what could they go apply today to help themselves be more productive?
I'd say be mindful of what you want to do. I think, and be super specific and super clear. And I'd say that is a really great starting point. I think especially as mums and entrepreneurs, we tend to want to do everything, and we tend to attribute value to everything, and feel that everything is important, which it is, and that's it's often unachievable. And when things are unachievable, then we start to not achieve them, and then we get negative feedback loops in place, and that's not helpful. So I'd say for many reasons, getting really clear and really specific on something that you know is achievable to do, and focusing on that, and getting that one thing done, that would be a really great foundation to be building upon for your immediate and your future productivity.
Oh, I love that tip. Hey, Amy, if someone wanted to connect with you, where would you want to send them?
Ooh, there's lots of places. If you're a Twitter fan, then connect with me on Twitter. If you're a LinkedIn fan, grab me on LinkedIn. If you're a Facebook fan, then Facebook. Or if you're an email fan, then either through the Make Your Brain Work website, which has got lots of resources linked to the book, or our Synaptic Potential website. My email's there. So yeah,
Terrific.
love connecting.
And I will link all of this up in the show notes as well. And I'll also link up the book. If you guys probably haven't read the book because it's pretty new, and I don't know, I think some people go, okay, productivity books, I don't know if I should read that. But as you know, just from our 30-minute conversation with Amy, it's full of applicable stuff that you could go out and maybe you're not thinking about, like the prioritizing and multitasking, and all of those things are so helpful. So we'll link everything up. Amy, I appreciate your time and your wisdom.
Oh, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you, Sheila.
Terrific. Well, have a great day.
Thank you.
You know, the world needs you, so don't underestimate your greatness. If you liked today's episode, you can spread the word by using the share buttons on the side. And if you want to learn how to simplify your life and your business, join the community and get our free updates directly to your inbox.